Yep, but the pictures give you a good idea that there's a lot of variety and a lot of things to do. And what we're going to do is just kind of randomly have the kids up and share one thing about the ministry site that they really enjoyed. And then they always get to include one fun story because there's so many stories that happen along the way. So we'll just let the kids begin.
One thing that we did, it wasn't really a ministry work, but we went to the college there in Jackson and we listened to Hollis Watkins talk about what it was like to be in the civil rights movement. And one thing he said was a lot of people think it was older people, but it was really people from the ages 9 to about 18 that really made the most impact. And pretty much the only thing they really cared about was trying to get to vote. And a lot of people think that, I don't know, that they just wanted to be treated the same, but their main goal was to try and be able to vote, just to, I don't know, get their elected officials. And then and since then, the entire Congress of Mississippi is all African Americans, so they've come a long way since then. And Hollis also taught us a couple songs, and you heard the last 2 songs in the videos. And he was just a really great guy, and somebody asked him if he felt safe now that it's been, I don't know, 50 years since then. And somebody asked him if he felt safe, and he said that he doesn't think that he'll ever feel safe just because of what he's been through. And he said he's been to jail, and the longest he's been was 55 days. And he's just been there and done all that, and it was really cool just to talk to somebody that was taking part in that, and just knowing that it wasn't that long ago, that it's still recent.
Well, at our ministry site, Genesis, there's this guy, really nice guy, Thomas, and I remember I started talking to him, and he told me his story why he worked there. And he said that he had a wife, but unfortunately she died before him. So, and then he went to Indianapolis, and he had a relationship there, but that didn't really work out. So then he moved to Jackson, and then he said his whole purpose, and he kept asking God, what's his purpose? His whole purpose there was to work there at Genesis. And so, I almost cried. I don't know really what else to say.
Fun memory.
The City Museum. So we went to the City Museum in St. Louis, and that was probably one of the funnest parts of our trip, which we all thought was just a normal museum. And I told everyone that you never know, and luckily they listened. So then we all had a great time.
Explain what it is.
It is a giant playground inside and out, 10 stories up.
And the slide.
The slide and the Ferris wheel at the roof.
Somebody else can answer. Just go whoever's ready.
So one of the other great moments was working in the Salvation Army and the Boys and Girls Club South and stuff like that. We just played around with the kids and just had a blast with them and stuff. And yeah, and my favorite moment was, or almost favorite moment, was at the Ark when we were really high up. It was kind of scary though going up there because it's a really tight space in this little pod that you just keep on going up, and it was just rocking back and forth. But it was just a great time. I had a blast.
I was with Johnny, and on our work crew, we actually worked with kids every day, and it was great. But the best thing to see was that you would go in there and they knew you were a volunteer right away, and they didn't know what your name was, they didn't care where you came from, they just ran up to you and would hug you and want to play with your hair and just love you no matter what. And it was really, really a great experience for me. And My fun thing was, well, my work crew was full of energy, and so whenever we drove to our ministry sites, I don't know if any of you have ever done a Chinese fire drill, where if you just so happen to hit a red light, everyone gets out of the van and runs around and then gets back in. And we did that a lot. I'm surprised no one got hurt, but we were all safe. Kelsey got a bruise, but I think that's it.
My favorite part of the trip was the City Museum with everybody. Bill and I were climbing around, so that was fun. And then one of our ministry sites was Mustard Seed, and it's adult autistic people with Down syndrome and stuff. So they went there, it's like a daycare. So they went there every day, and they had a job, and their job was to paint pottery. So I brought a piece of the pottery that I bought from there, and they, on the bottom, they say they put their names on there. So I met Will and Steve were a couple of the people I met. So after I spent the day with them, I went back to the gift shop and I bought their pottery that they painted, and all the money for the pottery that they make goes to them so that they can do whatever they want. So that was my favorite part, was the mustard seed.
Okay, well, I was in Diane's ministry crew, and we worked at Genesis, and Genesis was a food bank and also a thrift store. And so we painted the mural outside of the thrift store, so that was in the picture, all of the ocean scenes. We all painted that in 2 days. And then we also met this guy named Jonathan, and he was the owner's son. And Jonathan was telling us all about like their donations and things they had received. And their food bank was they bought it for $75,000, but the guy who sold it to them has not made them pay a cent on it yet, and they've owned it for like 12 years or something. And one of the things that the man who owns it wanted was for him to pay a year's worth of electricity. And instead of paying a year, he paid 8 years for them. And it was $5,000 a month for the electricity bill. And so it was really cool to see that there were so many donations and help going through this thrift store, because it was one of the first ones that was set up. And it's also in like a really rundown neighborhood, so it's right around where people would need it, so that's really great. And then my fun moment of the trip, you saw a picture of it, where our vans were parked in front of a gate. We drove into this parking lot, and because we were trying to look for parking down by the Hard Rock Cafe, and we just drove in thinking there was like a pay meter somewhere in there, and we like drove up and down the rows, and then there wasn't a pay meter, so he's like, oh well, maybe we can't park here. So we go to leave and this gate is shut, and we're like, how are we gonna get out? So we sat there for 5 minutes or so, just like sitting there, just not knowing how to get out. And then finally this guy comes out, and he's in his like uniform and everything. He's like, what are you doing here? And Bill's like, I'm really sorry, but the gate was open and we came in thinking it was a pay lot and it isn't. And this guy was like, no, this is a residential parking area. You're not supposed to be in here. And we're like, well, how did we get in? And he's like, well, you must have followed someone in that lives here. And they had opened the gate, and we just drove in right after him. So that was my good story.
Okay. So I went to the Voice of Calvary, and we had to lift a bunch of heavy stuff. Okay. My group was all girls, and like this guy was like, do you have any boys in your group? I'm like, no, we have woman power. And we proved him right that we could do it. We lifted a bunch of steel doors and heavy stuff, and he went off to go back to the church to do something. I think it was fix the AC or something. And he came back and he's like, whoa, did you lift all that? You got all that downstairs? And we're like, yeah, we have woman power. And my fun moment there, well, actually I have two, was when me and Rachel McLeod, we played this one game, and we had to do a castle thing. Yeah, castle thing. And we almost won. We almost.
I feel like we should probably demonstrate.
Yeah, okay. So,
It was kind of like rock, paper, scissors, but you had to like form the shapes with people. Right? It was nice. So nice like this. And princess. Yeah. And then castle's the best. No, we took second.
we took a second, but we had a great run on there. We're pretty good, you know. My second favorite moment was the Warhead Wars. If you don't know what a warhead is, they're really, really sour. And like, we took like, I bought like a bunch of bags because they were $1, you know, you can't pass up that offer. And like, we would take out 5, and me and Johnny boy here.
You and Lucas did 8.
Yeah, me and Lucas Roberts did 8 at, you know, you go like this and you're like. And we had to see who won, and like, oh, I think I lost that one, but no. What? Yeah, you can't feel your cheeks after that either. Suggest not doing it, but.